It's Pleb Talk, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Neil with the Balding Plebs, joined here tonight by my brother,
Mr. fucking YouTube, baby.
Mr. fucking YouTube. Welcome to Pleb Talk.
Sup?
The Last of Us, Part 2. Let's talk about it. We just had a chance to see some gameplay the other day. We've got to look at that. And of course, right away, you kind of had some comments on different mechanics you were seeing, some things being expanded on, and you started making a list of things that you would like to see be different in The Last of Us Part 2 from the original Last of Us.
Well, you know, PlayStation is really smart. I'll give these guys credit. They give away The Last of Us remastered on PS Plus. So I have been actually kind of tooling back through that a little bit, kind of whet my appetite for The Last of Us Part 2. We're very excited for Last of Us Part 2, in case you guys are wondering. Probably more excited than we were for The Last of Us, the first one. We've played The Last of Us Remastered. We've played The Last of Us Left Behind. So, pretty well versed in the games. But I definitely think there are things that The Last of Us 2 needs to do to improve. Now, The Last of Us was released in 2013, PS3. Then the remaster comes out 2014. It might have has the DLC and all kinds of nonsense and some touch-ups here and there.
Yep.
But for the most part, the game was made 2013. So we're 6 years removed from that. And going to be 7 years basically removed from it when The Last of Us Part 2 comes out. So there is some, 7 years, long time in the technology world. Gaming changes, what people expect changes. And so when you go back now, after playing games maybe like the Tomb Raider reboot and Uncharted and some of these games, and you go back and you play through The Last of Us, some of the mechanics, at least to me, don't hold up as well as I wish they did.
I'd certainly be willing to say they feel a little bit dated.
Yeah, and that's the truth. And one thing that does hold up, so let's just get this right out of the way, the story, right? And I think a lot of people, when they play The Last of Us, one of the things that they really like is the story, the way it was presented, the way that it was very human, right? You had a very powerful narrative driving sort of this evil or sort of this macabre or sadistic sort of undertone that really drove the game. And I think the story is very memorable. You play through the start of the game, right? The very start, maybe that first hour. And that's one of the best opening hours I can remember in a long fucking time.
The whole opening sequence is phenomenal. And I think it drives one of our main characters forward.
I don't know if you get that type of opening in anything else that I can remember off the top of my head. I mean, we've got 2-3 bookshelves worth of video games down here, guys, and there are very few games that you just remember that vividly. I mean, for those of you watching this, if you haven't played the game, it is free on PS Plus. I at least would say get it, download it, play the first hour.
For sure.
And you'll see what we're talking about just from an emotional standpoint. A game that really impresses itself upon you in its opening hour. Probably better than just about any other game that I've played.
I'm with you.
So that presents such a gripping hook to the player that it's really tough to let it go. But for me, there are parts of the gameplay in The Last of Us that I wish were better.
All right. Well, Mr. YouTube, let me ask you this then. What do you think The Last of Us Part 2 needs to do for you as the gamer?
Well, I think one of the things that it is obviously going to do is it's going to change characters, right? It's going to change the main character that you play as. Obviously, you played as Joel in the first one, kind of the dad figure, right? And you're going to play as Ellie as in the second one, kind of a teenager, coming of age, sort of growing up or becoming an adult sort of vibe, right? So it's definitely a different tone. I think for younger people or people who aren't fathers necessarily, it's a little more relatable to play as Ellie than it is to play as Joel. Personally, I think that. I could be totally wrong. I connect with Joel's struggles, but it's not as much as, say, maybe Lara Croft in the Tomb Raider reboot. For whatever reason, I'm not sure why. Right? I don't know if it's because it's like, okay, I connect with his struggle and some of his emotional struggles for sure. But I don't know if it's just because I'm embodying a character that has, sort of like the dad vibe, and because I'm not a father, I just don't necessarily connect that well with it. Whereas if I'm going to embody even though it's a girl, it's a 20-year-old person, so it's something I've lived through, right? Being 20 or being, coming of age in that 18 to 20 range, and just because I've lived through that, it's easier to connect to that type of a character.
That's fair.
So that is something that I think will be a positive, at least for me. Okay. And I could be way off on that. It'll be interesting to see how I feel about the game at the end of it. If I feel that Ellie is actually somebody that I can actually relate to and feel connected to. Because that's really important to me. When you play through a story-driven game, I have to feel connected to the character that I play as.
That's fair.
Or I have to at least feel connected to the overarching theme, right? And if I don't, then I'm going through the motions.
Good enough.
And I don't like that. So that's a big one for me, and I think it's going to be interesting to see how that works.
Well, I think that can be said, about games like this, because I feel like if they just throw you into a game with like a totally faceless, emotionless character, and you go into a room, shoot enemies, protect this character, pick up items, go to next room, shoot enemies, and your character, there wasn't a story behind it. I think there would definitely be a lot of lack of motivation for you as a player.
There'd be a huge disconnect.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
So the best games in this genre, right, really present a connected character, right? Maybe I think, okay, let's talk other Naughty Dog games, right? Let's talk Uncharted. So Nathan Drake, right? A character that I think a lot of young guys, right, like us, want to be, right? That's kind of that Indiana Jones character, good with women, off adventuring, finding tons of gold and shit, and kicking ass and taking names along the way. It's a very James Bond, Indiana Jones style of character that I think is just super easy for any 18 to 34-year-old to connect with and say, hey, this dude's the shit. I want to be him. I want to play this game, right? So it's a little bit harder to get that connection when you're talking about, okay, here's a father. He's had some tumultuous times. The world has ended. And now he's trying to have these other relationships with people 20 years after this horrible event, blah, blah, blah. It takes a different set of understanding on the gamer side to connect with that. It's not as easy as saying, hey, we're going to present this interesting and fun adventure with basically an archetype, right? This Indiana Jones archetype that is pretty well known, right? To just about every 18 to 34-year-old on the planet. So definitely something to really watch there. And probably one of the key things for me is Ellie going to be a character that I can connect with? Even as, a 30-year-old male, am I going to be able to see her struggles and feel that, hey, yeah, I had some of those same struggles in my 20s or my early, late teens, early 20s that she's had. And obviously, we didn't go through a zombie apocalypse or something, but, are we going to see some of those same struggles, those growing up struggles, those coping with some of those type of relationship difficulties and things like that? I think that's going to be interesting. So on just a meta level, I think that's going to be cool to see, and going to be an interesting dynamic to this game.
Very interesting. Talk to me a little bit about, because you and I have a lot of discussions about like combat, and we have discussions about in-game mechanics, some things that we wish were different or wish were there that weren't there so much. Talk to me about the combat specifically. What would you say is one thing that you really want to see them expand in the combat of The Last of Us Part 2?
I think in general, the gameplay in The Last of Us lacks a little bit. It's set piece to set piece, and it's I'm not sure how to explain it, but I do not necessarily feel that the combat offers the dynamicism that I think it should, or that I think, especially now as we look at the second game, the dynamicism that it needs to offer. So what can they do different? For me, it's a combination of things, right? It's going to be, I'd like to see more upgrading.
Okay.
There's a lot of times in The Last of Us, as I'm playing through right now, where I'm feeling like my upgrades are very sparse.
I also felt the same way.
The combat itself, I feel lucky to get stealth in the combat.
Stealth always felt lucky in that
Yet
game to me.
I'm always attempting to be stealthy.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's from playing other games, maybe like Assassin's Creed or the Tomb Raider reboots, where I just felt like the stealth was better or more useful. But I definitely feel that the stealth mechanic in this game, at least on harder difficulties, is borderline useless. It could just be because I'm fucking terrible at it. I mean, that's a possibility. But I do feel the stealth sucks for the most part.
I also felt that way.
So I want to see the stealth be more useful, because the actual combat, when you're in, whether it's hand-to-hand combat or it's in shooting these things, is difficult. You know, especially on normal or hard difficulty. I'm having to play the game on easy to progress. I can tell you that for a fact. I find the difficulty balancing in this game to be off. Okay? Playing on normal, there's parts where I'm thinking, hey, I'm doing a nice stealthy thing. I'm going to come up and kill this guy, and all of a sudden I got two or three thugs swarming me that can hear a pin drop from half a block away. And I'm like, how the fuck? Okay, I just killed your buddy. You wouldn't have known that in the real life. I would have slit this dude's throat and buried him in a freaking trench, and you would have been none the wiser. So, I just really, unfortunately, do not feel that the game was balanced as well as I would have liked it to be on a difficulty setting. I don't like to have to play a game on easy. It makes me feel like I'm missing something. I feel that normal is a difficulty that should be completable, and I mean, I don't necessarily say it should be easy, but it should be doable. On normal, there were parts I literally could not pass. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 attempts. It's like, okay, I'm not understanding what I'm doing wrong. I'm trying to be stealthy. I'm trying to, use the mechanics the game has showed me, and I am not making progress here. So what the fuck? And without an experience sort of system, right, where, kills gain experience, or, you're leveling up HP or damage that you do or something like that.
Yep.
It feels that when you're stuck, you're stuck. And I do not like that. So that's kind of where I'm struggling with this. What I want to see is a broader range of options in the combat. Whether it's verticality being added, allowing for Ellie to maybe climb up onto buildings, get a vantage point, mark enemies, right? I know they have like the little sound thing where you can kind of go into that FAW sound mode and see all these guys like moving around and shit. But I'd like it if you had something where like you get up on a vantage point, you can mark the enemies, and then you can kind of watch where they go and plan your attack that way. I'd like for stealth to actually be viable. Like, when I drop your ass with an arrow to the head, like, I'd like to be a little bit more, I think, I'd like it to be communicated to the player a little bit better that
player feedback.
My stealth approach is working.
True. Well, let's talk about some of the stealth things that we've seen. We have seen some bow gameplay now that actually looked pretty solid.
It did.
And we also saw a few scenes of Ellie actually straight up, totally prone, crawling through the grass.
We did see that.
So it looks like we're seeing a little bit of expansion there.
So those are the things that are giving me hope for this, right? That are giving me kind of that vibe that, they're taking this to the next level, and it's going to allow for more opportunity and playstyle differences.
I found myself a lot of times in The Last of Us, because I did play a normal. I never changed the difficulty. I did play a normal, and you remember you fought the big guy that came into the gymnasium on you, and you're like, what the fuck is this? You remember that part? Yep. So I played through all that on normal. I got it's a little less further than you are right now, And, I found myself at times, 4, 5, 6, 7 times, but I'm more of a bash my head against the wall until I break through kind of guy. And, I found myself trying different things with, like, the bottles and the cans and putting a clicker over here and getting the enemies out of my way. So I found myself doing a lot of that kind of stuff to get around some of the enemies. But I definitely can see your point as, somebody that didn't change my difficulty. I can definitely see your point with what you're saying of some of these stealth mechanics feeling kind of rigid and stiff in this game, right? It's like sometimes it felt like it wasn't working right. Where, like, I would be sneaking up behind an enemy and they would turn just right and they'd see me somehow.
And then half the town would know you're there.
And I don't know if that is to communicate, and that may have been on purpose. That very easily could have been on purpose to communicate a sense of you're never safe, right? So, like, I always like to give the benefit of the doubt to the developers, to the creators, to everybody involved. That very well could have been just to communicate a sense of you are not safe. Just because you are using stealth doesn't mean this guy's not going to stop, and then sometimes they'll do that sudden turn, and they'll look right at you. You're like, well, fuck me. Now what do I do? How many times did that happen to you? I guarantee it's happened to you at least once.
What's happened?
And it happened to me when I played too, so I always found that even though you were being stealthy, you were never safe. And there was always that chance that, shit, I'm going to be doing this part over, you know? It definitely happened to me on multiple occasions, so I absolutely can see your frustration with that. For sure. For sure.
Yep. And, and so I think it is a combination of things like that, right? It's wanting the stealth, I think, to be better because it does give you that high, right?
Yeah,
when you do a stealth part. When you make it through a part with, let's say, 5, 6 enemies, and you do it correctly from a stealth perspective, and you take these fuckers down and they don't know you're there, that's a little high, right? That gives you a little high.
You're a little beta high.
A little beta high from that, no doubt. Like, that's like...
A lot of the comments know about beta highs.
Yeah. I did that correctly, right? I completed this part good, and you feel good about it. You go loot the bodies or whatever you do, and you're on to the next one. So I'd like to see that more because that communicates to you as a player that you're playing correctly.
For sure.
And there was times, definitely, where in The Last of Us, I thought I was playing correctly, and I apparently was not.
And then you got killed by a clicker.
Yeah. I got clicked.
Would you say you got clickbaited?
Yeah. So, above having the combat be better, or just more dynamic or more interesting, I'd like to see more shit to collect, if that makes sense. So basically, what do we have? We have, like, little upgrade gears and pieces. We've got, like, some of the, like, books that give you, like, okay, these help your shivs be better, these help your, the survival guides and stuff. And then you got, like, all the notes and crap like that, right? Mm-hmm. So, for me, I felt there was a significant underutilization of the world and of the space provided.
There were definitely a lot of larger open areas.
With nothing.
Yeah, and it's just like, walk down this street, building on both sides, nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing. Oh, disarm the mine. Nothing. Climb the thing. It got very walking sim for a while in some parts.
Yeah, and so...
Not to say that it wasn't good and beautiful looking, but there were definitely parts where I'm totally in agreement with you. Environment, I think, was underutilized.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean... Or there's got to be a way to allow the player to understand where relevant shit is. Right? If you're going to create these large areas with nothing in them of value or interest, that's fine. But I would prefer not to be running around, like, scavenging every nook and cranny to be constantly disappointed. Like, yes, I know it's end of the world and survival and all this great shit. But still, there are some liberties I'd like to see games take where they can at least give me the option, right? Look at a game like Tomb Raider, for instance, with the sense, right? When you hit the little sense, or even Assassin's Creed, I think, does it, where you hit the sense and you kind of see where a pickup is or where something of interest is. I'd like to see that, something to that effect in this game, right? A little bit better than it is.
No, me too. Totally. 100%.
Because I want the option, right? Whether it's something you can toggle on and off, I don't care. But I like the option of being able to say, okay, hey, I want to make some progress now. I want to make sure I've collected everything I need to collect here, and I want to move on, right? And sometimes, yeah, sure, I like to explore, and I don't really care if I'm getting anything. I like to see all the different environments and go into different building stuff. That's great. But when I don't want to do that and I want to make progress, I want to move on, then let me. But at the same time, allow me to know that I've kind of done what I need to do in this area.
Let me know that I didn't just miss something that's going to totally fuck me over in an hour of gameplay from
Exactly. I'd really like for that.
Like if you had gotten that extra 15 components, that extra whatever those little screw symbols are called, if you'd gotten them extra 15, you would have been able to get that skill. It would have totally changed your gameplay. Like, okay, then I should have gotten it. I should have been put in a position to succeed, not put in a position to fuck myself.
Yeah. So that's something I'd really like to see changed. If they're not going to do that, then at least put 2 or 3 more types of collectibles in there, or side quests, or something. Because I definitely feel as though the world itself in The Last of Us is underutilized.
Do you think that we could maybe, again, this is discussion, this is prediction, this is not canon, this is not confirmed in any way, but do you think we could maybe see some sort of world style like we saw in the PS4 God of War release, which is, yes, you are on a linear path. Like, I don't think that's really debatable. This is going to be a more linear story game. But, there might be some side areas for you to break off, fight a couple enemies, explore through a broken down building to find, some weapon attachments or some silencer parts or something like that. Do you think we'll see something like that where you will have side paths that have relevant stuff, but they're not maybe key to the main story's completion?
Well, I think you do have that here. It's just they're so large that you've got to really be willing to put the effort and time into exploring them.
I think that's right.
In God of War, in the new God of War on PS4, it felt like a lot of those side areas were manageable, right? There were manageable areas that were easily not maybe accessible necessarily, but once you went in there, you kind of knew you were going to get what you needed to get, and you could get out of there. So I think with the size and scope of the game, the amount of buildings there are, and the amount of rooms there are, right? You have to give the player a way to know that they've kind of done the looting that they need to do.
Yeah, for sure.
And I do feel that The Last of Us didn't do a great job of that.
What about having a character-to-character dialogue of saying something like, okay, I think this is everything we need, let's get moving.
That'd be fine as well.
And I know that's such a ham-fisted way of doing it. I know. That's literally beating the player over the head. Okay, I think this is everything we need, let's move on. Like, dude, how much more fucking obvious could it be that the game is trying to tell you you're done?
Yeah.
But it feels like it would help and be so useful.
Yeah, and I just think in general, that player-to-player discussion, we saw some of it, right, with, I think Lena's her name, and Ellie whispering to each other.
When they fall down by the clickers.
When they're in by the clickers. That's really key in The Last of Us Part 2 for me. That relationship and just feeling connected overall to that relationship is really important. And making sure those characters act in a way that would be believable and realistic in situations. So I think them helping each other, I think, maybe, if you're with another player, right, or an NPC, them saying, hey, there's something interesting over here, would also be believable. If you're not in combat, or, that you're not in a place where there's going to be some combat, if you're just in like an exploration area, having that player say, hey, don't forget to pick up this, or don't forget to check this room for this.
A game I want to give a call back to. Remember when we used to play Left 4 Dead 2 and it would say, ammo over here, got a med kit over here, shotgun here. Like, remember that stuff?
Yep.
It was the other player, even when it wasn't a main character, it was other like NPCs' way of saying, hey, there's something over here if you're interested.
Yeah.
I think, to me, it's a cool interaction, and it felt real, even though I knew that those weren't other players.
Yep.
When another player has control of that character, it's like, dude, shotgun right here, come get it.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff.
So above all that, too, I want to see more craftable things. Now, it does look like we're going to get some of that where you can actually craft, like, silencers in this game.
Sure.
Basically, what do you craft in The Last of Us? You've got the smoke grenades, you got the tin can bombs.
Shivs,
Molotovs. Medic hits, and Molotovs, right? So you got, like, a handful of things. I'd like more things to craft. I'd like being able to craft more weapon upgrades, or maybe more player upgrades as well, like with the little pills. I felt like there wasn't a lot of pills. I mean, I suppose it's possible I've missed them, but I do a fair amount of searching for this shit.
You do.
So I feel like player upgrades are very once in a while. You know, I don't get a lot of them. I only have like 3 or 4 of them, and I've played for a good 10 hours. Like, I feel like I should have more than that by now. So, yeah, it just feels like, again, the progress feels so just, like, slow, right? And maybe that's because I've played a zillion roguelikes since, and I get progress after every death in those games, that this one just doesn't have the same progression.
Very possible.
But I really want to feel like there's just more shit to upgrade. Even if it's smaller, it just makes me feel like I'm doing something useful.
You want to feel like you're making progress all the time. You do. You want that feedback, and if they aren't going to give you that, what is something else that's going to keep you coming back? You know what I mean?
Maybe it's enemies that drop 1 or 2 little pills once in a while,
or even
they work
like
as
the screw parts,
you know, or screw parts or something. It's just feeling that I should be able to upgrade a little bit more. Maybe, I don't know, or having the weapons have more modifications, or easier opportunities to do some of the modifications, or more interesting modifications than just like, you know, draw strength for the bow, or like, you know, it just felt like there's like 1 or 2 things that you could get, and they were all seemed to be locked behind 4 levels of upgrades. I'm like, come on, can I get anything here for the first level?
Can I whittle down my bow and make it a little bit stronger? I mean, cut a brother some slack.
So I don't know. Maybe I'm being a little too harsh. I do that a lot when I get to a game that I'm really excited for and I want to see improvements. So I will nitpick on things.
Yeah.
And I don't want people to sit there and think, God, these guys hate The Last of Us. That's not the truth. I love the fucking game. And I'm very excited for the second one. It'll be a day 1 purchase for me. It's a pre-order. Guaranteed. You guys will be able to see it on the channel. It's just when we get a game, we get a series we really like, we really want that top tier experience.
And we want to see the game grow and make progress as what was the word I'm looking for?
Yeah, I mean, I think we got it. You look at Red Dead 2, right? Yeah. You look at that game versus the first game. Mm-hmm. You had that 6, 7, 8, 9 year development process. I think we really got a special game with Red Dead Redemption 2. You know, some people can argue it, I'm sure, but I thought it was really well done, very well put together overall package.
Yes.
I want to see that same sort of upgrade and that same sort of leap for The Last of Us Part 2.
Well, especially after 7 years.
Yeah, that would be really awesome. You know, hey, I want to hit you guys up. You know, those of you out there watching this, watch me bitch and moan for a half hour. Give me some comments. Let me know what your thoughts are. Am I on point here, or am I totally off base? Or do I just totally suck at this fucking game? Could be that. I mean, I'm not going to say I'm the best player. I do struggle with it. But I want you guys to let me know what your thoughts are. Are you more excited to play as Ellie than you are as Joel? Or, like,
are you 50-50?
Are you 50-50?
Do you not care?
Did you find the combat like I do, where it kind of feels a little unbalanced? Tell me your thoughts. I want to know what you guys think.
Yeah, let us know down in the comments. Hit us up. Like the video if you enjoyed the honest discussion on The Last of Us and The Last of Us Part 2. And we'll see each and every one of you right here next time for more honest, real YouTube content like this.
You're welcome.
GG, you plebs.